Welcome in, everybody, to the NFL Week 12 preview show with Uncle Phil and Smooth Andy. Thanks for joining us this Wednesday evening. Really appreciate all the love and support. Uncle Phil, Smooth Andy, how you guys doing?
Man, great. Look, man, loving NFL right now. Went a hair away from about 10-3 on the notebook. Ended up finishing 7-6 on that, and then went 7-1 in my NFL public plays this past weekend. Starting with 1-0 on Thursday night, 2-0 my best bets on Sunday, 1-1 on Sunday night, and then just a fireworks show on Monday night. Went 3-0. Was a heck of a night. So anyway. It was fun. I'm excited. Like I said, we've been telling everybody for weeks, this is the time of year that I typically do well. And that's not pathetic. That's just history. That's what I do every year. So I know the teams and ready to make some moves. So Smooth Andy, what about you, man? How's life for you today?
Yeah, not too bad. Glad all the storms have blown through, and just looking forward to another good week, hopefully.
Yeah, no doubt. You had some pretty good games this week, didn't you?
College, I did fine. Pro, I didn't. I went 2-4. I had, but I knew I was in trouble when I had to pick Jacksonville and Dallas. Although I thought Dallas was going to do it, they were hanging in there in the fourth quarter, and then it just opened up at the end, and that just ruined it. But Jacksonville, on the other hand, was just a disaster from the start, as kind of expected.
Yeah,
Doug Peterson hasn't been fired yet, has he?
Still not fired, and I'm assuming he's not going to be. I mean, Shad Khan is not really a big fire somebody in the middle of the season. I mean, he did that with Urban Meyer, but that situation was toxic and just kind of bad. But he doesn't like to fire people in the middle of the season, so I'm not. I mean, there was so much smoke around it that he was going to be fired and that this was his last game that, I certainly was believing in that hype, but I'm certainly not surprised it's turned out this way. And if he's not fired by now, he's probably not going to be. But look, from a betting standpoint, last week favorites went 9-5. Typically, not a week that is suited for your system. So I understand. I mean, 2-4 is really not that bad considering the amount of favorites that covered last week. For the year, favorites are 84, 79, and 3 for 52%. And week 11 totals, the overs covered went 8 and 6. And for the year, the overs are slight favorite or are slightly ahead at 83, 80, and 3. So for 51%. So again, Vegas kind of, I guess it goes to say that, with sides at 52% and overs at 51%, you need to at least go 53% to make a profit. So again, Vegas knows what they're doing. The public and anybody else who just chooses one side or the other may not be making a profit, but Vegas always is.
Yep. That's why I like to be on their side, but being at 48% or whatever is a little bit. Hopefully, that means something's coming, and we're gonna have a nice week this week.
Yeah, look, I mean, it is. I mean, because it will even up, but I mean, we kind of are, unless we get out of kilter this week, we're kind of around the same thing. I mean, unders are 5 games under 500 when it comes to the side. So, there's some margin for underdogs to come back and win and kind of get back toward closer to 50%. We really hadn't got out too much out of whack. Obviously the first week favorites went 10-5-1. And we got, dogs came back after that. But the worst we've ever gotten was the dogs were covering early on at about a 56% clip in week. Well, I'm sorry, 56% and under at week 4, and the unders were covering about a 57% clip in week 3. But after that, it's tightened up, stayed no more than 53%, and obviously has whittled its way down and toward the end of the season. So interesting. Did you have a surprise game or a surprise team this past week that you liked? I mean, in looking back at the games, I realized it's Wednesday. We typically do it on Tuesday. So, you kind of already, we're already looking at lines for this week and have transitioned from last week. So maybe a little bit of unfair softball or curveball for you. But I just wonder, if you had a game that really stood out to you this last week.
Probably one of my wins, which would be Seattle. Divisional game against San Francisco, but they won the game outright. I had them as a dog, and was very pleasantly surprised to see them win outright. That was a good one. I've kind of had a soft spot for Seattle as a not a dominant team as a favorite or anything, but as a nice underdog kind of team. There are a few teams I like in that capacity, and Seattle was probably the one this past week that really did a job, because San Francisco's not healthy, but they're getting healthier. A lot of the guys who were out, like McCaffrey at the beginning of the year and for most of the year, are back, and so they should sort of be hitting their stride a little bit right now. But they dropped that game, so I was happy about that one.
Yeah, look, I think you and I have been kind of waiting for Mike Macdonald, the new coach in Seattle, to kind of live up to the billing. We pumped him up so much in our preseason, AFC West preview that I think you and I both picked him out of all the teams, all the coaches in the entire NFL. I think there are 8 new coaches this year that we were most excited about watching. And, it's kind of been uneven. I know he's got players to kind of, jiggle around and install his system, change things, make it his own. But we're looking for things to kind of tighten up. And I kind of felt like that he did that. This was off a bye that, how I'm really big on looking at teams after a bye and saying, hey, is this team for real or are they not? And, or it really comes down to a coach. You're like, hey, a coach off a bye should be really prepared, and is. And we'll kind of talk about that. One of the teams that is not very good off the bye as we kind of get into the games. But interesting. I'll say that my game, I really liked, one of the games. I'll take one of my wins as well. One of my best bets was Denver over Atlanta. And again, the public was all over Atlanta. I felt like I really did a good job handicapping that game. And, Sean Payton has beaten AFC South. And again, nobody was talking about that. Nobody on ESPN, nobody anywhere. But I was watching it, and I was watching. He'd beaten each team, AFC South, by 19 points. Buried the Falcons 38-6 by 32 points, went well above the average. So, but Bo Nix, extremely accurate passer, and the Falcons generating the worst pass rush in the entire NFL certainly aided in that. So I just kind of thought that Bo Nix set up really for a good situation for him. Again, not real sure how great Denver is. Now, I believe in their defense, but I think their secondary is probably the best secondary in the NFL. But I think that was situational. It was set up for that. But, well, man, let's get into it, man. I'm excited about this week.
Okay, Thursday night, Pittsburgh 8-2 at Cleveland 2-8. Pittsburgh coming off a win over Baltimore 18-16, and Cleveland coming off a loss to New Orleans 35-14.
Yeah, well, we really don't have to wait long for our weather game. And this will obviously be our first game that starts in the 30s as well. Be 37 degrees, 68% chance of rain. Northwest wind 14 miles an hour. Now, yesterday it was going to be 38 degrees and it was going to be 81% chance of rain, and winds were going to be 16 miles an hour. So that can change. So everybody who's listening, please, make sure and follow the weather the day of. We just kind of do a forecast right now to at least alert you that there's some weather, and it's going to potentially play a part in the outcome of that game. In this one, I put my guess at I put Pittsburgh minus 1.5, and I put a total at 36.5.
Okay. You said 36.5 on the total. It opened 39 down to 37. You said 1.5 for Pittsburgh. I said -5. It opened 3.5. It's still 3.5.
You said 5 for Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's an 8-2 team against a 2-8 team with Jameis Winston in quarterback. I'm shocked that I know Pittsburgh's not probably as good as their record, but I really thought that there would be more juice for them. And the next game will be interesting too. You'll see in a second about how lopsided the records and everything are, and it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, it's an 8-2 versus 2-8. I mean, Cleveland's going nowhere. I thought for sure it would be a more than 3, and so I shot a little high.
Yeah, interesting. Pittsburgh 8-2 against the spread, and they are they've covered their last 5 and 2-0 since the last bye. Since their bye. So they're trending certainly in the right direction. Have been a good cover team all year long. They were undervalued going into the season. Hard to believe that Steelers are such a public team, but they've really been undervalued. And have covered that. They've been a great cover team this year, covering an 80% clip rate. So that can be good. Cleveland, on the other hand, 3-7 against the spread, failed to cover the last 2 or 3, and of course 0-1 against the bye. Really disappointing performance for them against New Orleans. We'll see how they do. I mean, obviously, all of that would lead you to Pittsburgh just being a slam dunk, and I'm sure that's what made you potentially, the way Pittsburgh's playing, the way Cleveland's not playing. It's like they beat Baltimore and said, okay, we're good for the season. But you can kind of see when you dig into the history of this AFC North battle, you can kind of see some instances where Pittsburgh is good. Pittsburgh is 8-2, obviously. They're 5-0 against teams with a winning record, but only 3-2 against teams without a winning record. And going further, they are 1-4 at Cleveland in their last 5 games, and averaging only 15.3 points a game, and have a -9, or have a -9 turnover margin. So you can kind of understand the odds makers kind of doing this with Cleveland a little bit, just because of a little bit of the history. But again, present day, current, a lot of times outweighs history, and the current is Pittsburgh is covering at an 80% clip, and unfortunately, Cleveland is not covering at about a 70% clip. Any last thoughts on this game before we move on?
No, just a little surprised by the number, but other than that, no. Yeah,
I mean, does that do you think that history plays something into that number? That's weighing into that? It's a division matchup. It is late in the season. Teams aren't as healthy. Russell Wilson, his red zone percentage is TD percentage in the red zone is 39%, where Justin Fields was 50%. His Fields' total QBR in the red zone was 86. Russell Wilson's is 8. So Pittsburgh is really struggling to score points, and maybe the odds makers are thinking, with the weather, with the history, with Russell Wilson's lack of production in the red zone, that's what's keeping the probably going to keep the total down, probably going to keep that's why that total has narrowed down all the way. I think you said it was 37. So it's narrowed down to that much. And if you're going to have that much narrow down at 37, then you're probably going to have a lower spread as well.
Yep. Okay. We'll go to the first game at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Detroit 9-1 at Indianapolis 5-6. Detroit coming off the win over Jacksonville 52-6, and Indianapolis coming off the win over the Jets 28-27.
Yeah, obviously Detroit was a big winner for me on Sunday. It was a no sweat Sunday for those that tailed me, and we did a really good job on Sunday. I was really proud of the way I viewed things, and that we made some people some money. This one's obviously in a dome. There's no weather. Kind of struggle with this one. I'm probably low on it, but it's kind of where I think it should be. I've got Detroit minus 5.5, and I've got a total at 49.
Said 49. Okay, so the total opened 49.5. It's up to 50.5. You said Detroit minus 5.5. I said minus 6. It opened 7.5. It's still 7.5. So going back to the previous game, you had 8-2. I know records aren't everything, but you had 8-2 at 2-8 was a minus 3.5 for the road favorite. And then with Detroit, you have 9-1 at 5-6, more or less a 500 team, and it was minus 7.5 as a road favorite. So it was kind of a big margin for me. I know Detroit's better than Pittsburgh, but I also think Indy's better than Cleveland. So it's a little surprising that there's that big of a difference.
Well, who do you think? What division do you think is the best division in the entire NFL?
Oh, well, you put me on the spot.
I mean, I just say that I'm kind of leading you toward the NFC North. I mean,
right.
That, and I think you could look at this as Indianapolis is potentially part of the worst division, and so maybe because it's instead of inter-division rather than intra-division, that could be the difference in the spread. Obviously, Detroit coming off the massive win over Jacksonville probably has made that spread a little bit wider. And, of course, the total going from a 37 total with Pittsburgh and Cleveland now to a 50.5 total, you can see the greater the margin potential for that. It should be a really interesting game to me with Anthony Richardson back. Had his best game last week as a pro. Now, will it continue? There were some signs for me to say that it might, because what I saw with Anthony Richardson in that game and watching the tape of the film of the game and rewatching that, I saw him more poised in the pocket, and his feet were still. I'm a big person to watch quarterbacks' feet. I don't want to see them bouncing around. I want to see somebody who's just set in the pocket and is set there to deliver. And of course, they turned him loose and let him be Anthony Richardson and let him run again as well. So again, he had 2 rushing TDs in that game, and the entire year this year before that, he only had 1 rushing TD. So I think they're kind of playing his game, his strengths and letting him be him, which is good. So, we'll see. Again, his completion percentage was 67%, 1 game sample. Before that, this entire year, it was at 44%, one of the worst in the NFL. So, again, a massive improvement for him. And the big thing for him, he had no turnovers in that game as well. So, I'm interested to watch him again. I don't know that this one's going to be one of my best bets just because of the line, and I don't see as big of an advantage. We talked about, how we extrapolate this out. This means that, they'd be a 13.5 point favorite, the same as Jacksonville if they were at Detroit. If you go, 10.5 at neutral and 13.5 in Detroit, it just, to your point, I mean, that does seem a lot. You start comparing. I could see not comparing them to the Pittsburgh-Cleveland game, but I can definitely see comparing them to another AFC South opponent in Jacksonville and going, is Indianapolis as bad as Jacksonville? Seems like a lot of points to me. But Detroit's a juggernaut. We'll see. Detroit, one of the big things about them, Jared Goff again, seems like he has a perfect passer rating like every other game. Not really, but he did have one this game. It was his second perfect passer rating of his 9-year career, but the third time he's eclipsed 150 points in the past 7 games as far as a passer rating. So, I mean, really just doing well. Again, I've been advocating for him to get more love as far as player of the year. He's not getting it. It's the same. It's the same suspects at the very top. But Jared Goff, to me, is well deserving. The unfortunate news about Detroit this week: linebacker Alex Anzalone got a broken forearm, out 6 to 8 weeks. Should put him back about week 17 or about the first round of playoffs, depending on that timeline. What do you think about this Detroit team? I mean, they keep winning, but are you sold on them?
Yeah, I'm sold on.
Yeah, I mean, they seem like a juggernaut. Do you think they should be the favorite to win the Super Bowl? Or do you think
they should be the favorite to win? I think they should be the favorite to win the NFC. That's about as far as I'll go right now.
Yeah. Do you still see Kansas City or Buffalo potentially? I mean, those seem to be the three. I mean, I think
it's Kansas City and Detroit. That's right now where the top of the pecking order is for both conferences. Buffalo did just beat Kansas City, but I'm not ready to hand them the crown for the AFC for a regular season win at home.
Yeah, they do that every year, right?
Yep.
They win during the regular season every year, whether it's at Kansas City or at Buffalo. Yep. Are we dismissing Philadelphia? Are we not considering them, and they should be considered? What do you think about that? Because I kind of, when I think about this, I immediately go Detroit, and then I go Kansas City, Buffalo. I've kind of put Baltimore off the back burner just because they're secondary. You don't see a lot of teams with that are championship teams with really bad losses. You see Baltimore getting beat by Cleveland at Cleveland. You see them giving up a double-digit lead at home in the fourth quarter to Las Vegas. It just, to me, seems like, and then Lamar in big games, and we'll kind of get to this, but again, against teams like Kansas City and against Pittsburgh, they lose their identity. Lamar just starts throwing the ball. They don't rush Derrick Henry. They just kind of lose their composure and forget who they are. This tough, physical running team, and just lose that. So I kind of dismiss them, but I keep coming back to Philadelphia. I'm not sure exactly where to put them. I feel like I'm not exactly giving them credit. What do you think?
Well, I think Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and who else? Minnesota are probably a step behind Kansas City and Detroit right now. I know they're just a step behind record-wise, but I think they're a step behind. They can all win in the playoffs, over Kansas City or Detroit, but I think they're both. I think those 4 teams are sort of the next tier at the moment.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. It's their defense is a Super Bowl winning defense, but their offense is not. And with Baltimore, their offense is, when they have their identity, their defense is not right now, which is an unusual thing to say about Pittsburgh. With Philadelphia, what is it about them that makes you put them a step behind?
Last year, I haven't really. I mean, they beat Washington, which was a good win, but I don't recall them impressing me with a big win over, say, a Detroit or they didn't beat Detroit. Who beat Detroit again? I forget.
Tampa Bay early in the season.
That's right. I mean, Philly's I think they're a good team, and they have the chance to make the Super Bowl. I just think they're not as impressive as Detroit. That's it to me.
Yeah, you just kind of feel like in some big game that some of the coaching blunders by Nick Sirianni is going to cause something going to cost them the game. But anyway, well, let's move on, man.
All right, next game: Kansas City 9-1 at Carolina 3-7. Kansas City coming off the 30-21 loss to Buffalo. Carolina coming off the bye.
Yeah, this one outdoors, 61 degrees, 1% chance of rain, southwest winds at 6 miles per hour. Be a good game in Carolina to watch the game. So I've got this one at Kansas City. I put it at 9.5, maybe a little high, but I also put the total at 43.
Okay, you said 43 on the total. It opened 41.5. It's 43 now, so you got that. Kansas City, you said -9.5. I said -10. It opened 11. It's still 11.
Wow, that's big.
Yep.
It's big. Kansas City feels a little bit to me like the NFL's version of Miami. Miami, just wins at the end and kind of coasts along, and all of a sudden Georgia Tech beats them. I feel like that I'm not comparing Buffalo to Georgia Tech because I think Buffalo's clearly we've established that they're a Super Bowl contending team. They're in that bubble. But Kansas City has just kind of played around, and I'm beginning to wonder if they can flip that switch. I mean, there's still lots of games to go. We're only 10 games in for them. Still got 7 games to go. But these last 7 games are going to tell me a lot about what I think about Kansas City going in the playoffs. I mean, we always just kind of take for granted that, hey, Kansas City can flip the switch and turn it back on. But, when they get in the playoffs, if they want to depend on third down, depend on the fourth quarter to come back, you can't always do that. Patrick Mahomes said that in his press conference that, we can't just depend on just flipping the switch in the fourth quarter. We've got to play a full game. What are your thoughts on what he said?
I don't really. I mean, maybe they're playing with a charmed life at the moment, but they do seem to have a different level they take when they go to the playoffs, especially defensively. And as a Kansas City fan, I trust. I mean, last year they lost 4 or 5 games. I think they didn't get the bye in the first round, and they won the Super Bowl. I think they can do that again, and they're 9-1. It's not like they're 7-4 or something, or 7-3 or something. And not that would be bad, but you know what I mean. They're actually on paper better than last year in terms of their regular season record at this point. So, they're going to be dangerous in the playoffs. Somebody's going to have to step up and really play a great game to knock them off. I think that's just the blueprint right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's in the words of the immortal Ric Flair, to be the man, you got to beat the man. So, I will. I'll kind of leave it there on that one, just because they are the man and have been the man for the past 2 years, and they're not going to give their crown away willingly. You're going to have to go take it. So we'll see how it goes, but we'll move on.
Okay, next game: Minnesota 8-2 at Chicago 4-6. Minnesota coming off the win over Tennessee 23-13, and Chicago coming off the loss to Green Bay 30-19.
Yeah, Chicago, again, another tough loss. Weather in this one, 48 degrees, 12% chance of rain, southwest winds, south winds 12 miles an hour. I've got this one at Minnesota 2.5, and I've got a total at 41.5.
Okay, you said 41.5. It opened 39.5. It's still 39.5. You said Minnesota -2.5. I said -3.5. It opened 3, and it's up to 3.5. So,
yeah, interesting. I felt Chicago looked a lot better in this last game. As far as the total, real quick, not surprised. since Minnesota's bye, the last 3 games have gone under for them. Chicago, the last 4 games have gone under. So not surprised by the lower total on that one. 39 does seem really low for this game at some point. It's going to get too low. We'll see. I liked what Thomas Brown did last week. I talked to everybody. We talked about last week about how Thomas Brown was the coordinator for the interim coordinator for the Carolina Panthers last year under Frank Reich. And the rushing yards went up during that time for Carolina. And I suspected it would as well during that time as well. Just obviously a 1-game sample on this one. But they went from 28 rushing attempts, an average in the first 10 weeks or 10 weeks, but one of those was a bye, to 34 last week. Again, hard to get really excited about one, but you did certainly see that. The other thing you saw is the completion. You saw the number of passes actually go up by Caleb Williams. He's averaged about 19 passes, and he actually threw for 23. But they were precise, quick reads. They were throw it. Here's the target. This is what you do, which led to Caleb Williams. It was his fastest seconds to pass at 2.42 seconds to pass, fastest this entire season. So clearly they worked with him on that, saw the improvement. And even though his number of completions went up, his pass attempts went down by 2 as well. So overall, really good game by Caleb. Tough loss. Look, you just got to feel like that's going to bite Eberflus. You just can't keep losing those games like that. So we'll see how that game turns out. But any last thoughts on this game before we move on?
No, not really. Seems about right.
Yep.
Next one is Dallas 3-7 at Washington 7-4. Dallas lost to Houston 34-10, and Washington lost to Philadelphia 26-18.
Yeah, not much to say about Dallas. They got 2 offensive linemen that were injured, probably not going to play this week. One's Zach Markin's probably not going to play for a while. You're at the time now where you're probably going to start sitting some veterans just to improve your at least if they are smart, that's what they'll do to prove their draft status. Unfortunately, it's not a very good draft this year. I've got this one. It's weather's 55, 1% chance of rain, and winds 9 miles an hour. I've got this one just given, Washington off of the mini bye coming off playing Thursday night, Dallas coming off a very short week. Makes a bad situation worse for them. I've got Washington -10, and I've got a total at 47.
Okay, total open 46. You had 47, and it's down to 45. So you're right up in that range. Washington, you said -10. I said -7. It opened 9.5. It's up to 10.5. So you're more right on that one than I was.
Yeah, seems about right. I would imagine after seeing Dallas's anemic offense this past week, I can understand how that total went down. They just can't score, and I think the odds makers, the public, starting to see that. You're like, hey, that's too high of a total, and also Washington they've gone under the last 3 out of 5 games, so really be an interesting game. I'm interested to watch this game because I want to see. I don't feel like, I know he's been injured, and maybe this is one of those injuries that just lasts throughout the entire year, and you find out how bad it was at the end of the year. But Jaden Williams just hadn't been himself since the injury. Hadn't really been running the ball that much and taking advantage of that. I just wonder if this is a game he'll come back to himself since he's had a little bit of an extra rest, or is this just going to be one of those nagging injuries? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I had Dallas, as I mentioned, Monday night, and yeah, I remember they were right in the game, and then Zach Martin got hurt, and then 2 plays later, their apparently highest rated guard in terms of, I guess, PFF or somebody had, ratings on all the offensive linemen. Their best rated offensive lineman was one of their guards, and he got hurt. And then the next 2 plays, Zach Martin, the guy who Zach Martin would have been blocking, got a sack, and the guy who that guard should have been blocking got a sack on the next play. And I thought, oh boy, okay, here we go. So they're depleted. Presuming both of those guys. I know you said Zach Martin's out. I'm not sure how.
It's actually Guyton, their right tackle.
Was it? I thought it was a guard.
It could have been a guard too. I don't remember that, but Guyton went out too because remember there was a strip sack and Guyton, the right tackle, picked up the ball and started running with it. Then Petrie, number 7 for Houston, just came up and just hit him right in the shoulder, popped the ball loose, and Houston's defensive lineman ran it back for a touchdown. This was late in the 3rd, 4th quarter. This is what happened, and he was the guy who got the original sack. The guy who got the strip sack was the guy who ended up running it in the end zone. So that play hurt Guyton, and he was not to be heard from the rest of the game. But guard could have been too. I just didn't see that one.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it's going to be fortunately for Dallas, Washington doesn't have the greatest pass rush, but we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, not sure it's going to matter. Houston didn't really, I don't think they really blitzed much all night. It was just 4, and Cooper Rush still couldn't hit anybody. So, pretty off-target percentage.
Okay, next one up is Tampa, 4-6 at the Giants, 2-8. The Giants with Tommy DeVito as quarterback, which I don't understand, but okay, fine. Both teams are coming off a bye.
Look, Drew Lock, it's an interesting story. Drew Lock's been the number 2 all year, and all of a sudden Tommy DeVito's elevated.
And Daniel Jones got demoted to 3.
Yeah, and they just signed Tim Boyle today. So essentially now he's going to be their emergency quarterback because, look, they're not paying Daniel Jones. If they pay him and he gets injured, it's $23 million for them. I think it's they already owe him $11 million, and it's an extra $12 if he can't play to start the year next year. So they are not going to risk that. It's a business decision at this point. They're 2-8. They're not going to the playoffs. They're done with Daniel Jones, and that's why they're not playing him. But you did hear Dexter Lawrence come out today. He was pretty vocal that, hey, we were, it's tough not watching our best quarterback play. And so the players believe Daniel Jones is their best quarterback and not playing. So you'll wonder what kind of effect that has on them, and if Tommy DeVito can actually bring some juice to this game. This one's 51 degrees at kickoff, partly cloudy, northwest winds 15 miles an hour. I've got this one, Tampa Bay. This may be a little low. I put 2.5, and I put 45.5.
Okay, you said 45.5 on the total. It opened 42.5, and it is down to 41.5. And for the point spread, you said Tampa Bay -2.5. I said -2. It opened 3.5. It's up to 5.5 now. Probably on the news of Tommy DeVito being the starter. That probably drove it up.
Could be. Well, interesting to see if Tommy DeVito actually performs better than Daniel Jones. Look, it just couldn't be much worse than this. Big boost for Tampa Bay. They are getting wide receiver Mike Evans back for this game, and they're also getting their left tackle back, Tristan Wirfs, which is massive for them to get him back. New York Giants, Darius Slayton's been in concussion protocol. He should be coming back for this game. And the Giants are also getting back Kayvon Thibodeau for this game. Surprisingly, both teams are getting healthy this late in the year, which is kind of an odd thing to see. The one little stat that's interesting to me on this game is that Todd Bowles is 0-5 against the spread when facing teams off a bye. Tends to get out coached in these spots. Will he get out coached in this one? I mean, it just seems like a great opportunity for the Giants. I know you'll hold your powder till you see your numbers, and the numbers dictate where you go on Sunday. But any thoughts of wanting this one to go, or you're just like, I hope the numbers don't tell me to go this one because I don't want to play the Giants?
Yeah, I don't want to play the Giants. I might be at this point of the season where I need to start ignoring some of my indicators when there's a team with a quarterback like Tommy DeVito or Cooper Rush or whatever. So,
Right.
Or for that matter, Mac Jones. So yeah, I'm hoping my numbers don't say Giants, but they probably will, and I'll probably ignore them at this point.
You're wise beyond your years. All right, let's move on.
Okay, New England 3-8 at Miami 4-6. New England coming off the loss to the Rams 28-22. Miami coming off the win over Vegas 34-19. And I'm going to take a bio break while you talk for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, these are two teams that are actually ascending, which is kind of surprising because we thought the AFC West was dead and buried, and Drake May has certainly given energy to New England. Tua coming back has given a massive lift to Miami. The weather in this game is 78. It's going to be clear. Northeast wind 6 miles an hour. Man, to live in Miami, not a bad gig. I mean, when you're living there, I'm sure that some people are like, hey, you don't have all 4 seasons. Well, when it's 78 degrees and clear in November and it's snowing, like it is in some cities tonight, I think the 4 seasons might be highly overrated at some point. You can go visit the 4 seasons, but 78 is pretty phenomenal. Look, again, the teams, New England is 4-6-1 against the spread. They're 2-3-1 against the spread since Dre May took over, but have gone 2-1-1 against the spread and have and straight up in the last 4. So again, against the spread, they're kind of a sneaky little cover team, this New England team, but they're facing a team that's really getting better and really just hammered the Rams last 2 weeks ago, and then hammered Vegas this past week. They've covered 3 of the 4 since Tua has come back. Also gone over the total 3 of the 4 since Tua has come back. Really interesting. Miami, I think they're a favorite to get in the playoffs. They've got the 4th easiest schedule remaining of any team in the NFL. Tua's, barring another injury, hope that God forbid that happens. But, since he's come back, Tua's got a 78% completion record. They're averaging 28 points a game. His conversion rate on third downs is 61% now. And we talked about Caleb Williams as far as his releasing the ball very quickly. That's always been a strength of Tua's. He's at 2.43 seconds before he passes the ball, which is the fastest in the NFL. Just really hard to defend that. And they've got the 10th ranked defense. So really interesting team. I've got this game. Miami's favored at home. Beautiful weather in Miami. I've got Miami 7.5, and I've got a total of 46.5.
Okay, you said 46.5 and the total opened 44.5. It's up to 46. You said Miami minus 7.5. I said minus 5. It opened 7.5 and it's down to 7.
Down to 7. Yeah, I think that's probably the right direction. I mean, I see that, again, with my New England being who they are and being that sneaky team with Drake May. Interesting game there. Any thoughts on that game?
It's not exactly a thrilling game, but New England does tend to be one of those teams that I like to take as a dog this year.
Yep.
They're not a particularly good team, but they're not an atrocious team either. They hang in there most of the time. So
yeah, totally agree. All right, we'll move on.
Okay, next one is the last 1 o'clock game. Tennessee 2-8 at Houston 7-4. Tennessee coming off the loss to Minnesota 23-13, and Houston coming off win over Dallas 34-10.
Okay. this one is obviously in a dome, so no weather. I've got this game at Houston minus 8.5, and I've got a total at 43.5.
Okay. Okay, so the total you said 43.5, open 41, still 41. You said Houston 8.5. I said Houston 6.5. It opened 7, and it's up to 8.5. So you're right on there now.
Yeah, to me, feels about right. Again, Tennessee hadn't shown me a whole lot.
I like everything about their team except for Will Levis. That's the hard part. I like them as a decent team for 21 starters, but it's that one that just ruins it. And I had them last week against Minnesota, and all I needed was for them to get a garbage touchdown at the end. They had 2 possessions down 10 points in the fourth quarter when Minnesota just wanted to bleed the clock out, and Levis just could not move the football at all. It was so frustrating. They're playing prevent defense and all that kind of stuff, and he just couldn't do anything. It was awful. So yeah, Tennessee might be making that list of the other teams that I mentioned.
Well, you have to look at it because Tennessee is 1-8-1 against the spread this year. So betting for them and praying that this is going to be turning the corner is just an awful proposition to do it. So, and they're also they're 0-5 against the spread with teams against teams with a winning record. So it's just hard to step in front of that bus with Tennessee because they're just not showing any type of life, and they tend to kind of screw things up, especially with Will Levis rather. The other thing about Tennessee that concerns me, and especially from a coaching standpoint, I've told you this entire year that I've had my doubts about Bill Callahan Jr. That I just, I didn't see the pop in this Tennessee team that we saw last year with Arizona's Jonathan Gannon. And Tennessee they are the second most penalized team in the NFL. That's just coaching. It really comes down to that. And they had 13 penalties alone against Minnesota. So really concerns me. Look, I think Houston won. Obviously, impressive win against Dallas, but I don't think Houston looked particularly good against Dallas and winning. So I'll play the other side of that. But I do see their offensive line getting better. They've certainly made some adjustments to that, starting with Detroit. And then last week, again, on Monday night against Dallas, you saw that looking better. But, it would be hard for me to bet my hard-earned money or recommend the people that follow me to bet their hard-earned money on either one of these teams because it's a low trust level with either one of those. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, first of the 4 o'clock window. That we have 3 in the 4 o'clock window again, just like I think last week and I think the week before we've had that. So we just had 3 games total.
Yep.
If you're a red zone follower like me, it's a little, there's not as much stuff going on. But it's Denver 6-5 at Las Vegas 2-7. Denver coming off the win over Atlanta 38-6. Vegas coming off the loss to Miami 34-19.
Yeah, this one's in a dome. I kind of felt like this one might be a sneaky good game. I've got Denver just favored by 1.5, and I've got a total at 41.5 on this game. And also, quick correction: the Raiders are 2-8, so 2-7.
Oh, let me see. Yeah, it's funny. It still says 2-7 on Don Best. I just took it down from that. So, okay.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. You said 41.5 on the total. It opened 39.5. It's up to 41. So you're half point away right now. And
Okay.
you said Denver minus 1.5. I said -4. It opened 4, and it's up to 5.5 now.
Okay.
So I'll probably be on Las Vegas this week, even though I was closer to the actual point spread. I just think it's a division game, and Denver looked great last week. It's probably going to end up being Vegas for me this week. Just I can usually kind of guess where the public's going to be, and they'll probably be on Denver.
Yeah, I mean we'll see. I mean Denver is 7-3 and 1 against the spread, and Las Vegas is 4-6. But so Denver's certainly been a covering machine. But again, a division game seems like a lot of points to me. But it just depends if Las Vegas is quit. I mean, obviously they're in the bye week. Antonio Pierce, who hopefully is on his last year out with Las Vegas, fired his offensive coordinator, fired Luke Getsy. I mean, every time I turn around, I feel like Luke Getsy's getting fired. But Luke Getsy was fired. The offensive line coach was fired. The quarterback coach was fired. I mean, it's just next to the Jets just feels like a mess here. We'll see if Tom Brady brings some stability in that. Supposedly, he's going to have a bigger say than his 10% stake in the organization. We'll see if he can. I mean, look, he can't do any worse than what they're doing now. So
you could get a really smart football person who knows the front office better than Tom Brady to do it instead of a celebrity. I don't
look. I mean, we you haven't really had football players make the transition as well to front office. John Elway did it not very well. They won a Super Bowl under Peyton Manning. That was kind of fell in their lap. John Lynch has probably done the best at San Francisco, but then you could go back and point to, taking Ricky Pearsall a little early this year. Also trading away some picks to trade up to get Trey Lance really has hurt this franchise. And again, what we're looking at now in that has not been great. So, I mean, it's remained to be seen. I mean, look, we'll see how they do. I mean, look, I kind of feel like anything Peyton Manning does kind of turns to gold. I feel like Peyton Manning, whatever he wants to do, probably is good. I know this is hearsay, but I just sometimes wonder if Peyton Manning would have been with Bill Belichick in New England, how that conversation would end up. A lot of Peyton Manning stats rivaled or were even better than Tom Brady's before his injury to his neck. You just kind of wonder if Peyton Manning would have been in New England with Belichick, how that would have looked and how things would have turned out. And Tom Brady would have been in Indianapolis. Not to say Tom Brady would have been any less, and he probably would, but I kind of think about that a little bit. But we'll see if Tom Brady's got that stretch. But I think we've spent more than enough time on the Raiders, more than they deserve. So let's move on.
Yeah, and you're going to end up spending 20 minutes watching them play on Sunday because the 2 of the 3 4:00 games are 4:25 games, starting with Arizona 6-4 at Seattle 5-5. Arizona coming off a bye, Seattle coming off a win over San Francisco.
I am really interested in this game. I like both these teams. I particularly like Arizona. I never thought I would say that, but I like this Arizona team. This game is 48 degrees, 54% chance of rain, northeast winds, inconsequential, mild, 5 miles an hour. My guess on this one is Seattle -3, and I've got a total of 41.5.
Okay, you and I, we'll start with the total. You said 41.5. It opened 47.5, and it's still 47.5 last I checked.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big one. And then you said Seattle -3. I said Seattle 3.5. I was probably a little high coming off their win over San Francisco, and Arizona coming off a bye. I probably should have considered that a little more, maybe gone below 3. But it opened pick'em, and it's still pick'em, which surprises me.
Can kind of understand that a little bit. In thinking about it, you kind of retrospect, kind of look back at things and go, maybe San Francisco is not that good that Seattle beat, and maybe Arizona, is getting a lot of credit because they're kind of looking a lot better. I mean, Arizona 7-3 against the spread, covered in the last 4. Seattle's 2-2 in their last 4, but 1-0 since the bye. Small sample there, but an interesting game nonetheless. This may be my favorite 4 o'clock game. Really looking forward to that. Do you have any thoughts on this game?
Just a little surprised that it was pick. I probably shot too high with 3.5, but 2 might have been fine. Pick's a little bit lower than I thought, so I'll be keeping an eye on where it moves if it does. I mean, it hasn't moved yet, so we'll see.
Look, if Arizona makes the playoffs, I think teams have zero interest in playing Arizona in the playoffs. This team, Kyler Murray, looks like the best version of himself. I love their running game. They're tough. They're physical. Cincinnati and Arizona are typically the cheapest owners out there that don't put as much in their teams, unfortunately for their fans. But this Arizona team looks good. I'm not saying that they're a Super Bowl team, but they are. They would be an issue in the playoffs, at least first round for sure.
Okay. Yep. Next game is the last of the 4 o'clock games. San Francisco 5-5 at Green Bay 7-3. San Francisco coming off a loss to Seattle 20-17, and Green Bay coming off the win over Chicago 20-19.
I've got this one. Well, first of all, weather 44 degrees, 31% chance of rain, winds 7 miles an hour out of the southeast. I've got this one. I've got Green Bay -3, and I've got a total of 43.5.
Okay, you said 43.5, opened 47, and it's up to 47.5. Green Bay, you said 3, I said 2. It opened 1.5, it's up to 2.5, so we got it surrounded.
2.5. Okay. Yeah, no, I certainly can see this. I mean, it's be interesting to see how it goes. Nick Bosa, the game really turned around when Nick Bosa went out the other night. Be interesting to see if he goes against Green Bay. That could potentially turn this game really in Green Bay's favor for me. When Nick Bosa went out, they were leading, and they really seemed to kind of flounder when Nick Bosa went out. When Nick Bosa, when he's on the field, they pressure a rate of about 33%. They pressure only a rate of 18% when he's off the field. Their sack percentage is almost 10% when he's on the field and about 2% when he's not. Again, they were leading when Nick Bosa was on the field, and then things really turned around when he went off the field. They just couldn't stop Geno, and Geno just I just really couldn't understand the defensive coordinator on that last drive for San Francisco. They just played a 4-man rush, and they let Geno just sit. They couldn't get to him, and they just let him sit back there and pick him off. And then, San Francisco was running some man-to-man, so they would run all the people to one side, then Geno would take off and run. And I'm just like, how are you a professional defensive coordinator? You can't figure that you're going to have to get pressure on Geno. You have to speed up Geno. When you speed up Geno, he makes bad decisions. And they didn't speed him up, and they made him pay, and they literally marched all the way down the field. So just an odd deal. I'm not, we talked about in the preseason. We warned people. We said, hey, this team is old, expensive, and brittle. One of the predictions that I had about this, thought they'd take a step back. Didn't know if this would be far back, but again, they're 1-3 against teams in their own division. Is it the team? Is it Shanahan? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's kind of why I'm wondering why this line is below 3, and it opened at 1.5. Again, I think San Francisco is one of those teams that's still living off their last year, their reputation, and they're getting healthier, and that's good for them. But they went out and lost to Seattle at home this past week. Something is clearly not clicking yet. Even though they're getting healthier in most places. So yeah, that's how I look at it. my inclination is to have Green Bay in this game before it hits 3, which I think it probably will. Let me check and make sure if it already hasn't. But no, we're seeing 2s now mostly across the board, so it's gone down from 2.5 to 2.
Well, I think George Kittle came out today and said he was definitely playing in the game, so I think that may have moved the line a little bit for in San Francisco's favor. That's probably what moved it.
That might be. I like Green Bay in this game. I just, again, records aren't everything, but it's 5-5 at 7-3. You would think 7-3 would be at over 3 as the line, and it's not. So we'll see. We'll see how the public goes after this one. But my gut feel is to be on the favorite. Well,
this one's going to be up right to a game time decision. Brock Purdy is day to day with a right shoulder injury. Also, Nick Bosa, we talked about the importance of him. That's going to go right up probably till game time as well. So we'll see. I mean, they are giving up a TD more and getting a sack less when he is out. That is how valuable Nick Bosa is to this team, and it proved it on Sunday.
Okay. Next game is a decent game. We'll see. The Sunday night game is Philadelphia 8-2 at the LA Rams 5-5. Philadelphia coming off a win over Washington 26-18, and the Rams coming off the win over New England 28-22.
Sure. This is a dome, so not that big of a deal on weather, or actually no deal on the weather. My guess on this one is Philadelphia -2, and I've got a total of 43.5.
Okay, you said 43.5. You're way off actually on this one. It opened 48. It's up to 49.
Wow. Okay.
As for the line, you said 2 Philadelphia. I said Philadelphia 3. It opened 2.5. Still 2.5. So about right.
Interesting. I'm surprised that it is that high. I think Philadelphia's got. Well, I mean, it's the odds makers certainly believe that the Rams are going to be able to pass on this Philadelphia defense, and they're not as good as advertised. But statistically, Philadelphia's, I talked about how I think that Denver's got the number 1 secondary in the NFL. Philadelphia would be my second choice. Statistically, kind of bears that out. But the odds makers certainly believe that, and so does the public, that I'm wrong on this, and that the Rams are going to be able to be capable of slicing and dicing this Philadelphia defense. Should be a well of a game. If we're talking about a 2.5-point spread and 49 points, should be a good game. May even keep you awake for the entire game on this one. We'll see about that. We'll see. One thing that I think about this one is that the other thing is that Vic Fangio, when he was at Chicago, faced Stafford a lot and really forced him to check the ball down. We'll see if he can do that, use that experience, and do that same thing at the Rams. Obviously different Rams offense now with McVay calling it, but it'll be an interesting game on that one. Like you, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting.
Yep.
Last game of the week, Monday night, Baltimore 7-4 at the Chargers 6-3. Baltimore coming off the loss to Pittsburgh 18-16. Chargers coming off the win over Cincinnati 34-27.
This one's in a dome, so again, no need to concern yourself about weather. It is interesting back-to-back games at SoFi, Sunday and Monday night. Really interesting. I've got this one at I've got the Chargers -3, and I've got a total of 47.
Okay. Total, you said 47. It did open 47. It's up to 50.
Okay.
In fact, let me double check. 51. Sorry.
Okay.
Updated earlier today, but it's 51 now. You and I both had the wrong team favored. You had Chargers 3. I had Chargers 2. It opened Baltimore 2.5. It's up to 3.
Yep.
I am surprised by that. I think the Chargers are not getting enough credit, personally.
Huh.
I mean, they're the home team. Baltimore, I know they're coming off a loss, but I mean, Chargers have been good all year, especially on defense. I don't know why they're the dog here, but I have a good feeling I'll be on them if the line stays like this.
Yeah, we'll see. Sorry about that. I had to fix technical issues on the side here. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one turns out. Now, you said the side on this one was what?
I said you said 3 for the Chargers, -3. I said Chargers -2. It opened Baltimore 2.5, and it's Baltimore 3 now. And
Wow.
the bets are on Baltimore. Yeah,
Wow.
I don't understand it. I have a pretty strong feeling I'm going to see that the Chargers are on my card this week, but we'll see.
We'll see how this goes. I mean, one question for you is that, aside from the side and the total, is that why in the world is, it's Harbaugh against Harbaugh. Why is this game not on Thanksgiving? I mean, it just seems like a family event that would be on Thanksgiving. I mean, I feel like the NFL does so many things well. I feel like they missed on this one.
Well, they probably already had the schedule before the Chargers hired Harbaugh, but I could be wrong. I think they seem to. Well, maybe I don't remember when the schedules come up, but
it came out in May. He was hired before then.
Okay.
He was hired after the championship game, the national championship.
Okay. Well,
yeah. So I just feel like they miss. One key stat. Really the only thing I've got several other things that I look at on this that I keep up with, but the one thing, the older brother John is 2-0 against the younger brother Jim. So we'll see if the younger brother. I think you and I both, by our guesses, thought that the Chargers were in a better spot right now. We'll see. Should be a really interesting game. All the offenses start to look really good against Cincinnati. Their defense is just horrendous. I keep holding out for Joe Burrow to make it to the playoffs, but I am with the growing contingent that Joe Burrow needs to force his way out of Cincinnati. I just do not think that that Cincinnati's ever going to step up and give Burrow the offensive line. I'm just tired of seeing him getting hit and just getting crushed back there. And he's doing his best. And they've got some, Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson. You've got T. Higgins. You've got some good players, really good players on that team. But unfortunately, the ownership there is just really cheap, and they're not taking care of him. And I hope he gets out of there. But again, side note, back to Baltimore, Chargers. Again, this should be a good game, and I think that after this game, I think I'm going to feel whoever wins this game, I think I'm going to end up feeling really good about one team and seeing other team in a different light. I mean, I think it's that time of year where I'm going to be able to make definitive statements about this. But any last word on this game before we bring Matt back in?
This might be my favorite line that we just looked at.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen several here I liked. I really like some totals in this one as well. But again, this is the time of year I really like some lines, and this week's no different for me. Matt, I think we're done.
Sweet. Yeah, I was going to ask before we wrap up, what game do you think the odds makers got it wrong out of anything on the board?
Yeah, I think it's the Chargers for me. I could be wrong about this, but that was the only game I had the wrong team favored. I got that wrong. I got a lot of teams favored wrong in the earlier weeks, but this is the only one this week that I got wrong. So
yeah, I've got two really strong ones on this, and you'll have to tune in on Sunday morning to find out.
I like it.
Yep, absolutely. Smooth Andy, any final words for the people tonight?
No, looking forward to another weekend of betting on football. We're at week 12 in the NFL. I guess we got 5 more weeks after this, and let's enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, look, we've got to enjoy Thursday night, Monday night, because we only get those through week 17, week 18. It's a free-for-all fireworks show all on Sunday. So, and so we'll do that. But hey, guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. For Matt, who hosts the show, Smooth Andy, who is the football quant. Please follow him at Smooth Andy 5 exclusively on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And I'm at Uncle Phil's Locks across all platforms. Again, thanks again. Please subscribe to YouTube. Comment there, even if you don't like something. Say it there. It's good for business, and I appreciate it. But guys, hey, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate you spending your Wednesday night with us. Hopefully you gathered something from this like we did as well. We always do. And as always, guys, have a great week, and let's roll.